Greetings and welcome to the Department of Incivility, a podcast on the Fall. My name's Adam.
My name is Pablo.
We've known each other for many, many years.
17?
Oh no, you said it. Okay.
Oh, should I have said that? I mean, I have now, so everybody knows. Full disclosure.
But we've been in bands together and we work together and we've been friends for a long time, and we've talked about the Fall pretty much every day of our lives for almost 2 decades. So therein lies the genus of this podcast. And the point at which we thought we would begin was where we began with the Fall. So what was the first Fall album you heard? When did you first hear it?
I think Age Before Beauty, Adam. So as I'm older than you, and my my Fall appreciation goes back prior to yours, goes back to 1989.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
I was 13 years old. Sort of age where you're just starting to.
But you're forming your musical identity at that age, like a very, very, very formative point, right?
Yeah, and I'd say it's possible. I don't know. I've been wondering about when music most gets you, and I'd say that I was at the beginning of that period where things really stick. The first Fall record I heard was This Nation's Saving Grace, from the impossibly far distant year in 1989 of 1985.
1985, yeah. And
my stepbrother gave me a C90 cassette which had that on one side, and I think it had the Dead Kennedys on the other side. The fact that I can't remember exactly what was on the other side says a lot about what I listened to most. And I'd just not heard anything like that. But there was something, it sounded like proper music in inverted commas, but weirdly skewed, particularly the vocals. I just didn't, it's Smith's layered vocals on that album that really, there's a sort of dreamy quality to his vocals on that album. And it's quite complex, the layering. Anyway, I just kind of I was learning to play the drums at the time, and obviously Carl Burns got me, but also the songwriting got me. There were really good songs. I mean, Paintwork, things like that. And I don't want to go on too long about this because clearly I could. So that was the first album I heard, and I'm going to stop there because I mean I could go on. But I'm going to go over to you now.
You mentioned that it sounded alien to anything you'd heard before, which I think is something common to many of a Fall fans' initial experience of listening to them.
Is that because I hadn't heard enough music before, though? Like, would I have heard, if I'd heard, say, I don't know, Bob Dylan or Howard Devoto at that point, would I have thought it was that weird? I still think it's very weird. So I agree. I think as a 13-year-old in 1989, I think it was very not like what you heard on Top of the Pops or Radio 1.
Yeah. And
if anyone is old enough to remember that, you'll know what I mean. Because I think pop had reached its most... chart pop had reached a very, very, very synthetic stage.
Mechanical, yeah.
Yeah, but not like the kind of miserable political... kind of mechanics of the early 80s. It was the Stock Aitken and Waterman era, and I kind of divide the 80s into sort of 2 or possibly 3 parts, and it seemed to be a lot going on in that decade that I can periodise in a way I can't for the last 15 years. That may be an age factor of age, I think it is, but it certainly sounded like nothing. It sounded like something older than I was used to, because to me, like, it was a live band recorded in a room, which in 1989 wasn't the thing. You know, you didn't record bands like that. Everybody had a massive gated snare and it was all very quantized, and it was just refreshingly. It was just a band playing in a room, just a really good band playing in a room, doing really good tunes, and in essence, that's actually quite conventional.
Yeah.
What made it unconventional was perhaps the context it was made in, and the weird fucking vocals and lyrics.
Yeah, I think that's kind of common to my experience. So my experience is that I heard. So Pablo basically heard like the sort of high point of the richest period of the Fall.
Get your controversial statements in there early.
as your kind of like entry point. Whereas my entry point to the Fall was when that kind of like golden period had like completely closed. So unbeknownst to me, I was like a sort of a child of grunge, and I was listening to a lot of the grunge and post-grunge bands of the mid to late 90s. And I heard the Marshall Suite from 1998 was the first Fall album I heard, which is it's sort of a watershed moment because that's the Fall album in which Marky Smith had completely excised all of the sort of major players of the Fall
cultural
up to that point.
Moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Year zero. Exactly.
I'd like to point out that it was actually, sorry to be pedantic, it was 99 because I remember 1998. That was a very specific year in which everything just collapsed in the what remained of the classic lineup.
Yeah.
And I think Marshall Suite came out in 99, just because I think he had to reassemble stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm just quibbling because 1998, I remember it well. It was not pleasant to be a Fall fan.
I thought it was 98.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I always take a year off. So I sort of had a vaguely similar experience to Pablo in that it sounded like music that I hadn't really felt could be a thing before that. Somehow, there was a completely otherworldly quality to it, even though there were aspects of it that were recognisable. And I think that, as you mentioned, a lot of that was down to the tension between the music and the vocals. And I suppose a lot of the kind of like the boilerplate rock band is where, you know, the emotion is or the feeling or whatever is sort of cohesive vis-a-vis the music and the vocals. And the Fall, that's kind of the opposite.
Okay. Yeah.
You think? I don't know. I mean,
I think
working
you're
out as I talk.
No. I've never thought about it like that. But you're more of a theoretician than I am, and I'd say that's a very interesting point. I think I'd probably instinctively absorbed that.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah. I'm sure I did. Yeah.
But it's interesting that you've articulated it in that way. It sounded somehow wrong and in opposition to each other.
Yes. Yeah. Because, as I said, this was as Pablo mentioned, this was kind of a year zero for the Fall. So there were kind of, it was a completely new backing band, as it were, for Marky Smith's venture. And if you listen to the album before the Marshall Suite, he sounds like barely doing anything. He doesn't really want to sing. And on the Marshall Suite, he sounds rejuvenated and he's like doing all kinds of shit. And it's like his vocals are fucking so expressive.
Right.
And he sounds liberated. And in that, at the same time, I feel like if anyone else had sung on those songs, they would be like, a lot of them at least would be kind of basic indie tunes. He kind of
elevated them.
Very much. Yeah.
So I think the tension here is that we're sort of identifying is how weird were the Fall?
I suppose this is something that we haven't really worked through, Pablo, because for me, the experience of listening to the Fall for the first time and hearing this sort of like this different quality of music that was possible was largely down to MES and the way that he sat upon the music. His vocals sat upon the music.
Mm-hmm.
And created this tension between the tune and what he was saying or singing. I don't know if that's the same experience for you or not.
Yeah, it is. It wasn't as pivotal to me as it probably was for you because you're a singer-songwriter, among many other things, and I'm primarily a drummer. So we came at it from different angles. To me, it was like beautiful fairy dust. Specifically with This Nations, because the vocal tracks are so weird and layered and dreamlike, and so well kind of interspersed into the tracks, and that isn't always the case with Marky Smith on Fall-oracles. Earlier ones, of course, are much more him just doing a single vocal track over the top. But with that one, I think him doing his weird singing over the top was just what made it so weird for me because I hadn't heard anyone else doing that. And if that hadn't been there, it would have sounded fairly conventional. There's that tension. But the Fall were a big deal around 89, 90. I mean, they were a very, very big deal in my teenage years. They were probably the most famous and fated indie band in Britain, certainly pre-grunge. And it's difficult to describe how big... They were very big in a small way. Whereas I think, was the context different when you... a decade later when you were listening to Marshall Suite?
That's a very good question. Yeah.
Were you reading the music press?
That's such a good question.
That weird turn of the decade internet transition.
Yeah, exactly, Pablo.
What did you think as a Fall fan in the late 90s, early 90s?
And I mean, it's entirely a sort of internet-related question because I was aware of them as kind of a concept that had a history through the internet. And I'd read about them in the kind of magazines they were on the cover of a lot, like Q and Melody Maker and Enemy, whatever.
Unbelievable that a band like that was on the cover of
Music Weekly,
isn't it? I mean,
it is.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. But I never... So I kind of... Yeah, they were kind of recognisable by name and by kind of a vague flavour. But it wasn't until I heard them via the Marshall Suite that I had a kind of concrete grasp. And yeah, so I didn't really have any clue about their history and like in terms of how turbulent it was, you know, and how I'd listened to the first album by a completely new version of the Fall. Like, so it was as if I was listening to the Fall as they'd always been.
Can I ask you in general, do you care about who plays on an album? Or is that the first thing you go to? You look at who plays on an album, remember what they play, and then you look at subsequent albums and think it's the same. What I'm trying to say is, how bothered are you, not consistently, but I mean... how bothered are you by like who, like for example, would you have even thought about that because you thought, oh, this is a band? Would it be something that you'd have to look more deeply into?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Purely because I don't know. Maybe even then I sort of like conflated the Fall with Marky Smith. So I thought this is a real Fall album because it's got Marky Smith on it.
Yeah.
And that was as far as I knew. So
Yeah.
sort of ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
But I mean, in a way, he probably was in a bit of a creative role because he had literally dispensed or driven out his last remaining childhood really friends, if you like, who had been in.
Yeah, man.
And
Yeah.
even Julia had gone, hadn't she? Because I don't know when Julia left, but she was the only connection.
2000-ish, I
Yeah.
think, yeah.
So it was really just him.
Yeah,
There was a big
indeed.
power dynamic shift as well, I guess, if you're just... He effectively was a solo artist. I know
Yes.
you wouldn't have liked the term,
I think you're right.
but there's that odd contradiction with him that you're saying I'm a band, but you're not.
I think this is the root of what we were talking about, vis-a-vis the tension between the music and the vocals.
Yeah.
Because he... MES, I think, is a frustrated writer,
Yes.
and he knows that his power is in his voice, but he needs something to lay that against, and therein lies the tension. He needs other people, but he also wants other people because he wants the tension. Because he wants people to be like, "Do what I fucking say. You're not doing it right," etc., etc.
And them going, no, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
After a while.
yeah, exactly. He's like, "Fucking good riddance, and you fucking guns."
Must be an exhausting existence.
And this is something that I thought about earlier, is that in Steve Hanley's book, the kind of like the full bass player's book, he quoted Craig Scanlon, the full guitarist, as saying when they joined, "Yeah, I don't mind Mark being a complete cunt to me. It's worth it to be in the full. I don't mind Mark telling me what to do and shouting at me and being a fucking dictator." It's worth. I mean, that was the kind of the Faustian pact.
And you know what? I completely understand that myself. There was a stage in my life where I thought I would similarly give in to any demands from a band leader if I thought it was going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
If I enjoyed it, if I enjoyed the creative side of it, and if there was a sort of momentum to it.
Yeah.
If there's no creative joy and there's no momentum, those are two different things. There's no point. But I completely understand that.
Creative joy and momentum.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a potent cocktail, isn't it?
Yeah, and often you can have one and not the other.
Exactly. But if you have both...
Yeah, I know, right?
And you're being abused...
I mean, I'd take the abuse. Does anyone want to send us a helpline? If you're listening, Helen or Greg.
I think that the period of the sort of the fall from 2000 onwards is more documented in that sense. In that sense of like the musician has rights,
right,
and has a voice, and you kind of hear more from people saying, "Yeah, my fucking turned grey because I'm in the fall. I love being in the fall, but I've had my third nervous breakdown, or whatever." Yeah. I don't know.
I think you're right, because I mean, if you think about if you think about the seriousness with which we now treat mental health issues and bullying, and I'd say even 10, 15 years ago it wasn't the same.
Yeah.
And that's a positive change.
Yeah.
So I think that is a change. Also, I think we've stopped venerating the artist in quite the same way. So a lot of bullying has been tolerated from people because they're creatively sublime, so we don't care what they do to the people around them.
Sure.
And I think that attitude, is no longer quite as mainstream as it was. Is that a
It's
fair
been undermined,
comment?
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I wonder if I spoke to someone about what Marky Smith, how he interacted with his band members, if people would just go, that's just horrible. Whereas, but quite honestly, I think, 20, 30 years ago, people thought it was funny. And it's not funny, is it, at all? I mean, some of it is quite funny, like hiding a tape recorder in your bandmate's hotel room So it was just really stupid. But yeah, I think sometimes they did give as good as they got. So I don't think he was quite the all-powerful sort of malevolent influence.
Yeah, this is something we have to get into in more detail, I think, in that Marky Smith kind of set the Fall up to be him against the band.
Yeah.
Which is, generally not how you think about.
No, it isn't.
I've
never thought of it like that. Yeah.
Like he's kind of in competition with them.
Yeah.
And they, obviously they've responded to that energy. But yes, at some point, I think it kind of overspilled, and there was no kind of equal weight between those two forces, and it was more him just dominating.
Was that when the switch over happened, when he became effectively a solo artist? Or do you think it all happened before? Or?
95, 96?
Yeah. Well,
maybe.
I suppose he was literally getting rid of people who had been in the band for years by that point. I would question some of his judgments at that point.
Yeah. That's what he also.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've already kind of problematized and venerated Marky Smith's artistic approach within the Fall, but and I say this with your penchant for decentering the front person and countering the cult with the front person in mind, Pablo. Ultimately, I think it's fair to say his voice, his words were critical in hooking us in. Yeah,
because the thing that really strikes you is the vocals.
Yeah,
so you think, hell, who the fuck is this guy singing?
Yeah.
So we all kind of gravitate towards that.
Yeah,
And there was no Wikipedia in 1999,
no.
So it wasn't easy. It wasn't as easy, obviously, to hear music. We all know that.
Yeah.
So I had to somehow. I actually wrote to John Peel because he said you could.
That's so cute.
And he said he posted me a Fall discography.
Oh my god!
This was all in 1992.
That's
the
amazing.
Year I was 16, and obviously the 1992 general election. It's the first year I really remember really well, and when I remember watching the 92 general election as it happened. It was depressing because everyone thought the Tories would lose, but they didn't. And so, other than that, in that year, buying Code Selfish was obviously my priority. But also, going back 13, 14 years to buy Fall albums. And when like I said, it seems an impossibly long time ago, and I felt I was unearthing ancient artifacts. It was a great feeling. I thought it was wonderful. One of the things for me is like listening to snippets of lyrics. So I would just hear little bits and think, what the hell's he on about?
Yeah.
This guy's amazing.
Yeah. We should mention, I think, that this was the experience of listening to the Fall when the Fall were around for the most part was pre-internet, and there was no lyric sheets around, so you would hear what you heard and make assumptions about, what the lyrics were. And that was the point. So you would not get an entire lyric sheet and think, okay, this is what the song's about in a sort of essayistic way. So, and I think that was probably what MES wanted and intended. He wanted people to hear bits and pieces and assemble a collage.
And I think it works because I'm going to sound very pretentious now.
Oh, yeah.
To me, it was very impressionistic, and you could fill in the gaps.
Yeah,
that your imagination filled in the gaps.
I think that's.
And I'm normally a very literal person, but I to me, I keep talking about dreaminess, but Nation sounds very dreamy to me. Whereas the lyrics are like you hear snatches and you think this is fast, and often I find they're more interesting than when I read the transcribed versions.
Yeah,
which you shouldn't really do, because that's not what you're. I've been advised that's not how you should read lyrics. Did you get the same feel with Marshall Suite? I mean, I suppose it's a different kind of introduction to it. Did you have the same sensation?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent.
I think so. Yeah. sort of like snatches of something that seemed sublime and bizarre and inexplicable and inscrutable, but brilliant.
Yeah. All of those things.
As if, I mean, this is like such a fucking, like, you know, like plumbing the depths of cliches about the Fall, but it's sort of as if there was a sort of an access to our transcendent truth being revealed.
Yeah.
Every now and again.
That's what I thought.
I always think back to this interview that Vladimir Nabokov did on TV, and he was saying exactly what MES said about his lyrics, where he basically said, all I want my novels to do is for people to kind of read them and have a sensation in their spine of recognition, like they recognise something about it.
I got a chill up my own spine when you said that.
That's all I want. And the sort of like the art critic guy who was sitting next to Nabokov said, well, artists are never the best judges of their own work. That's not what Nabokov is doing. He wants you to... There's much more going on than that. And I think that's the case with MES as well. Exactly the same. Like, he wants to put a chill up your spine. Yes. But I think there's huge amounts of richness and detail beyond that at the same time.
I mean, I love the... Apart from the sort of mysticism and tapping into psychic forces that we talked about, there's also these lyrics are also really funny as well.
Yeah.
So there's sort of ridiculing of modern life, or contemporary life. So this is not modern anymore, but that was very refreshing. And again, it's all contextual because you have to kind of consider the age we were and when we were listening to. But if I'd been a bit older, I'd have been more aware of the richness of music, kind of been aware of people like Beefheart or whatever. But I wasn't when I first heard The Fall. So to me, that was the first time I'd come across a lyricist being really fucking weird and a singer being really fucking weird.
Right.
And just being funny and subversive and not just singing about a girl they liked.
Yeah. Or not liking the government or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure we could do a whole other episode on Marky Smith's politics.
Yeah.
If we want to.
Because... do you want that, people?
Ooh, yeah.
Right, we're going to have to stop there. If you desire supporting evidence for all that discussion, dear listener, then Pablo has picked the tune Paintwork as emblematic of this nation's saving grace's uber dreamy qualities, whereas I've gone with Shake Off from the Marshall Suite as a masterclass of Marky Smith's singular vocal stylings. Farewell.